See if we can get back in.
Same thing.
Test, test, test.
The appointed hour has come, which sounds so fatalistic. Let me start over by welcoming you to the final BAR meeting, BAR large meeting of 2023. My name is Jake White. I'm going to pinch hit as chairman until our actual chairman arrives. He's running a little bit behind. Other board members here present tonight are Luda Subchuck, James Metters, and Seaton Brown. Staff present Travis Galley, Lawrence Courtney, and Tori Parrish. Applicants have been requested to submit any documents in advance of the meeting, as all these applicants will know. Staff's going to control the slideshow unless the clicker is available, which it is. You can use that if you like. It is actually working. Don't breathe on it. It might break. Everything in the slideshow was submitted by the applicant by the deadline in accordance with submittal requirements. Applicants can ask staff in advance or do it themselves. Applicants, staff, and board members are requested to state their names while speaking for the audio record. This meeting is being recorded and live streamed to the City of Charleston Public Meeting Channel on YouTube. Your appearance here is your consent to be recorded. The order of the meeting is as follows. There'll be an introduction and an overview by city staff of each project to the board and for the public, and then a 10-minute period for the applicant to present the proposal that can be extended to a maximum of 20 minutes at the discretion and request of the chair. There'll be a period of time for public comment afterwards. Written public comments, of which we've received none tonight. Is that correct? Yeah. We're due by noon yesterday, and any received comments that we do get are distributed to the board in advance of the meeting so we can read them. They're not normally read into the record or submitted in writing. Any member of the public who wishes to be heard in person on an agenda item is requested to state their name and address for the record, and to be reminded that there's a 2-minute time limit for these remarks unless extended by the chair. The applicant does not respond to comments made during the public comment period. It's not a dialogue. This will be followed by city staff comments and recommendation, and then a 5-minute time period for the applicant to clarify any comments made during the comment or staff comment. Then it's turned over to the board for discussion and a vote. The applicant does not address the board at that time unless called on by the chair, and the public does not interact with that proceeding. The results will be will be posted on the city website at charlestonsc.gov/BAR. There was this informal site visit on 40 to 46 North Market Street to view a mock-up panel that's been conducted individually by board members. We've had one item withdrawn, number 7, 425 Meeting Street. And then as a final reminder, please turn off all cell phones and other potentially disruptive devices. That's such a broad term. And please limit your comments to architecture only. That's the limited purview of this board. Comments related to zoning, parking, traffic, lot coverage, student noise really can't factor into our deliberations here. All right, with that, why don't we just go ahead and get through a few items.
And thank you, Mr. White.
There's a few items. Okay. All right. The first one is we're going to approve the minutes from the last 2 meetings, or review and approve. So October 25th, 2023 minutes were provided to you. Are there any changes, deletions, corrections? If not.
Okay. Metters and Mr. Brown. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Carries 4-0.
And second is the approval of minutes from the November 8th meeting. Same thing, any corrections, deletions, edits? Arguments?
And likewise, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Carries 4-0.
All right, we're moving on to the applications for the evening. The first one is 143 Calhoun Street. This is a category 3 building. It's in High District 5. It was constructed in 1907 and it is in the old and historic district. The request is for conceptual approval for a new accessible front entry at street level, restoring windows and existing masonry openings, and new rear service stairs. All right, in context, this one is on the south side of Calhoun facing Marion Square. And this is the front north facing elevation. And then an elevation of the west side. And then some context on Calhoun Street.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Ashley Jennings. I'm architect on the project, and with you tonight are some members of the Knights of Columbus Building Renovations Committee. I'm going to introduce the chair of the Columbus Building Company in just a moment. Let him tell you a little bit about the Knights, but I first want to start off by introducing the project. The Knights of Columbus have owned this building since it was constructed. And the request tonight is to do some renovations per a master plan that we've been working with the Knights for the past 10 years. The idea here is the building is not occupied right now. It's partially occupied on the top floor. And that's because they have some code issues that they've had to deal with in terms of removing some structurally damaged wood on the second floor, removing finishes. So the building is not being used to its full potential. The primary charge of the Knights of Columbus is to do charitable work. And so what we're trying to do is to look at the best use for the building, enable them to use the building for charitable works. And so that's what we as architects are in charge with on the project. And so I'm gonna let Joe just briefly tell you what the Knights do so that y'all can understand what the mission is.
My name is Joe Muley, and I'm the chairman of the Columbus Building Company. First of all, I want to thank you for giving us the opportunity to speak with you. And also to let you know that we are very, very aware of the historic nature, both of the city of Charleston and of this building itself. As Ashley already said, we have been the owners of this building since the day it was constructed. And interestingly enough, it was constructed with a loan from the Episcopal Diocese. So it's really been a combination of Christian organizations working together. I would like to make one little change on the very first part of the second page. It says that the Knights of Columbus is an international Christian men's organization founded in 1882, whose mission is charity, community service, and fraternity. I'd also like to add patriotism is a main part of our organization as well. And we do want to make this building 143 Calhoun, bring it back to its active status so that we can become active and productive members of the community. To give you a little background, the building itself, the Knights of Columbus, Council 704, was established in 1902. It was the very first Knights of Columbus Council in both North and South Carolina. It's considered the mother council for all the other councils. There are 60 some odd councils in the state of South Carolina alone. Also, I'd like you to know that we have the full support of the Charleston Diocese, of the State Knights of Columbus organization, and the national organization out of New Haven, Connecticut. We've been through a lot of things. We helped with servicemen during World War II and World War I. We were there for the Great Depression. Hopefully everyone here knows about the Turkey Day Run. It's a 5K run that actually was started more than 100 years ago as a relay race between high school students in Charleston and Somerville. And in 1978, the Knights of Columbus made it a fully sanctioned 5K run. It is now noted as one of the top 10 5K runs in America. And one of the fastest ones because it's flat. There are no hills that they have to go up. We're able to generate significant funds for well over 30 local charities. We do not do anything with regional or national charities. It's all done locally. And we vet every one of these charities on a consistent basis. Every year, every one of our charities come up for review. What we'd like to do is make 143 Calhoun become a profitable mission for our organization and be able to give back some of the funds that we can generate from that to help organizations like Special Olympics. I mean, we go everywhere from pet helpers to Special Olympics to the Habitat for Humanity and a number of other charities that we recognize and work with. We hope that we'll be able to make the building accessible. One of the big problems that we've had is entrance to the building itself. It is nearly impossible for anyone in a wheelchair to be able to get into the building. And our full plans would hope to be able to rectify that so that we can let other people know about the things that the Knights of Columbus does and to be able to help our charity partners.
So to start off with, this next piece that you see here is just a list of the charitable organizations that benefit from the Knights of Columbus here in the city of Charleston region. And so to go briefly over again, once again, what our charge has been is to create the best use for the building. Right now, some of you may have been in the ballroom that's on the top floor. They used to have a lot of events there. The ballroom is still intact and they'd like to use that to lease it for events. There's a potential to lease the second floor for events. And then there's an English basement in the building that's been traditionally it's been occupied by the Arts and Craftsman Supply. They've just vacated the space, but they'd like to use that as a lease space as well. The Knights do occupy a small portion of the building and they will continue to do that, to have meetings and to have preparations for the Turkey Day Run and other types of events that they have. But the intent is to be able to lease the building for use to add to that ability to provide for charitable use. This is a site plan. I mean, obviously everybody knows where the building is. It's right across from Marion Square. And this is a building in the state that it's in today. There is a lot of maintenance that needs to be done to the exterior of the building because the building's been vacant for a long time. There's been a deferred maintenance and those things need to be addressed at some point. And that's part of the master plan, is to look at all of those items that need to be addressed on the exterior of the building, repointing the masonry, restoring the wood windows on the front of the building. There's some structural telegraphing cracks that need to be addressed. And these are some close-up pictures of the front of the building. And one of the things that we're going to ask for tonight is removal of the grand staircase in order to provide an accessible entrance to the building. And we'll get into that a little bit further down in the presentation. But the idea is to look specifically in these images at the condition of the existing stairs as they exist now. They're original to the building, but we believe that that might have been the value engineering in 1907 of the building. It doesn't seem to have the same type of finish and detail that the rest of the building does. These are some Sanborn maps. The building has occupied the site obviously since 1907, but previous to that, there was a residence on the property that was used as part of the J.M. Connolly conglomeration of buildings that was part of their funeral home. And so these are some existing historic pictures. As you can see on the top left, that's the building that preceded the Knights of Columbus building here. In the middle at the top, you can see the dedication and an image that was taken the day that the building was dedicated in 1907. To the right of that, you see a very blurry image of the building that existed prior to a fire. And you can see there's an element up that pops up in the back, and that was an area for a flyover the stage that was part of the ballroom. Then you can see a more recent picture of the building down below, and then the current state. One of the things we wanted to note in these images is the changes that happen on the English basement level of the Calhoun Street facade. You can see at the top of the images, there were two windows that opened into that space. And as you move down and you see the next iteration of the building, they open those areas up to storefront when those spaces were being used. One was a barbershop, I believe, and there was a bowling alley down there as well. Those window openings compromised that area and had to be infilled. And that's why you see the framework that you see on the front of the structure now with the stucco and then the brick infill panels that don't match with the existing brick. That work compromised the two flanking tower elements that are on either side of the entry. And they had to come in and do some structural work inside the building, and that was done prior to the other structural work that's being ongoing inside the building. But the idea is that where you see that white band across the front of the structure, there's a new bond beam back there. So our charge was to look at how do you get into the building and provide accessibility. And when we talk about accessibility, there's two things we usually talk about. We talk about code compliance, which is one set of accessibility standards. And then we also like to talk about ADA. And ADA is a federal guidelines that is not typically enforced by our local building official, but it's something that is important from a civil rights standpoint. And in this case, because this is a charitable organization and the building was built by the charitable organization, they feel like they need to meet current ADA standards and not just current accessibility standards as part of the International Building Code. So that was our charge. And as you can see, we looked at about 30 iterations of how to get into the building. These are the three that were probably the most concise. But as you can see in the far left, the one study was to look at entering the building on the side. As you can see in that first image, the Knights do own a 4-foot wide strip of land on the west side of the building that enables them to have some passageway outside the structure. It is only 4 feet wide. And if the adjacent neighbor ever decide to build up to the property line, it's a very narrow passageway. But there is an opportunity to access or to have exiting through that passageway on the west side of the building. And so that was one of the logical places to look at intervention to provide some sort of entrance. Because the building is partially elevated, any kind of accessibility to tie into the sidewalk would have to come at a mid-level. And so it's going to interrupt a little bit of the floor plate on the English basement level and the above street level in order to provide some sort of accessibility with an elevator that has a half a stop and 2 levels. And so that was the challenge. So we looked at this first instance, which was to enter the building on the side. The second instance is to enter the building in the tower, the flanking tower straight onto the street. And then the third study, which we made, and we think this is the best solution, is to enter where that stairwell is now. One of the issues that we've come up against with the proposal to create an entrance in one of the flanking towers is that we do have that structural beam there. And the beam occurs at about 5'8". So from a head height standpoint, that has to be interrupted in order to create a viable entrance on that face. There's also some telegraphing in both of the towers, and that's a concern that a structural engineer being working with Russell Rosen has had about doing any kind of intervention in the tower element. So we've landed with the big picture is removing the historic stair and creating a more graceful entry right in the center of the building. So this is a slide just to kind of diagram the types of structural intervention we would have to have if we provided some sort of ground level entry or sidewalk level entry. And you can see if we go in the center space, that red element at the top is a header. That's really the only structural impact that this storefront would have on that we would have to remove the stairwell. The stairwell is not solid all the way down. We've looked at it from the inside, can be removed. In the tower elevation, you can see that bond, the dark red is that bond beam, and you can also see the varying heights there. Just to give you an idea that the sill of that window is only 8'9" above the sidewalk. So here's some streetscapes showing the building as it's constructed now and the proposed. I know you're looking at your watch up.
We're about 18 minutes.
Okay. All right. On the top image, you see the building as it exists now. On the bottom image, you see what we're proposing here. One of the things I want to talk about or reiterate is that the building was intended as a symmetrical building when it was designed and when it was built. And the idea of removing that stairwell kind of honors that original design. It removes that grand entry. It's still a grand entry, but it lacks the stairs. I'll quickly move through these. In addition to creating a sidewalk level entry, the other opportunity we have is to open some of the bricked in openings to create and add the windows back into the building, and also to tuck a service stair and potentially even a service elevator on the back of the building. And this is just some diagrams to show you what comes out when you take out that English basement level to create that level, that half level. This is at the sidewalk level. This is at the next level. And the idea would be to create some sort of entry foyer on each floor to provide access to whatever type of space is leasably important for them. And then the top floor is to be, the ballroom is to be reused. And there are a lot of good bones in the ballroom that we want to maintain. There's pilasters, there's fireplaces, and then to tuck the services that need to be provided for that, for access to the ballroom in the back of the building. And one last item is to corral any kind of mechanical on the roof. So here you see the existing and proposed. The proposed is to provide some sort of elaborate storefront wood with some paneling, some detailing. And then, as you can see on the east side, we're not proposing to reopen any of those windows because we're right on the property line there, and there's been a proposal for a hotel there at one point. This is the back. We're going to corral some of the things that are happening on the back of the building and enclose this that exit stair. And then this is the west elevation, and this is the elevation where the window openings could be open because we're still 4 feet off the property line there. This is an image just showing what that might look like. The idea is to leave the wing walls from the stairwell in place and to re-establish the 2 bollards that have been removed on either side, and to re-establish those windows in the English basement level. And then finally, just a close-up shot of what that might look like. The idea would be to carry some sort of tile that's period specific from the sidewalk all the way through into the entry lobby. And you can see there the remnant of the stair and marking that remnant. And that's it. Thank you for allowing me to go over.
Great.
Does anyone have any questions?
Yeah, any questions from the board? Yeah. Okay, any?
Very quickly, did you say actually that the windows will not be open on each side?
They'll be we're proposing to open them on the west side, but not on the east side, because the way that the building is located relative to the property lines, it's on like a 0 lot line on the east side, whereas there's a 4-foot buffer between the property line and the face of the building on the west side. Both of those are potential development properties that could build right up to the property line. So the idea would be to open the windows on one side where the building couldn't come right up against the side.
Are they boarded right now with plywood or something?
Some of the openings are completely infilled with brick, and some of them have been plywooded.
So what is, if they are not open, you have a proposal to fill in?
Yes, we do.
I maybe missed it.
So on this side, the idea is to open as many of them as possible. And then on the east side, there are some on the upper level that have been infilled, and the proposal is to re-infill those with a better quality product, with wood or something.
Okay, but not plywood.
I mean, and then leave the existing brick infill in the windows that have been infilled.
Any other questions? Not, public comment.
Good evening, here in the heart of the Preservation Society of Charleston. First, the Preservation Society would like to thank the architect and the Knights of Columbus for reaching out to us throughout the design process. We are very supportive of this longstanding organization and their efforts to rehabilitate this incredible historic building. In particular, we are very pleased to see the proposal to restore window openings to their original configuration along the west elevation. However, we struggle with the proposed entry design from a preservation standpoint. It's typical for historic buildings to not meet current code, and retrofits for new uses call for creative solutions that create effective function and access while retaining the character of the building. This proposal will result in a significant and irreversible alteration to the primary facade, an approach we fear is too heavy-handed. The Knights of Columbus building is an architecturally unique structure for Charleston and highly visible in its context fronting Marion Square. Therefore, we ask that a less invasive approach be explored to avoid detrimental impacts to the historic integrity of the building. Thank you.
Good evening, Justin Schweber with the Historic Charleston Foundation. This project has been in development for a long time, actually before I joined the foundation. I remember looking at it when I first started, but it's not been an easy decision for us considering the scale of modifications to the primary entrance of this notable historic building on Calhoun Street. Due to the mission-focused justification for their application, we hope that the proposed modifications to the structure, most importantly to allow ADA compliant and equitable access to the building, will help the Knights of Columbus continue their important work and to utilize the building for another 120 years or more. We do not oppose the design direction for option C, but we would recommend deferral of the application to restudy the design of the storefront windows to better reflect the architecture of the building. The current design of the storefront windows feels too commercial for a building with such highly styled brick coursing and embellishments. We would also like to see the council emblem from the transom window retained or replicated on the new design, as it's an important identifying feature of this building. Thank you.
Okay. Any further public comment? Hearing none.
Okay. A little bit of analysis. The Knights of Columbus building is a dominant presence on Calhoun Street as well as on Marion Square. Related to code compliancy, the Secretary of the Interior Standards for Rehabilitation as well as preservation of a historic building recommend identifying the exterior character defining elements and sensitively applying code related work so that those character defining features are preserved or impacted as little as possible. The standards also recommend against altering or destroying exterior character defining features while making modifications to comply with accessibility requirements. Character defining features of this building include the crenellation at the top, Knights of Columbus sill at the top, ornamental brickwork, arched entry and window openings, main entry arch sign, stone plaque over the entry, and the main entry stairs and associated sidewalls. The entry stair, while not a huge element on this large building, is a huge and significant part of the public side of the building, likening it to a nose on a face. Proposed option C is a great design with good proportions and inviting entry and high quality materials, and staff appreciates the thought that has gone into developing it. However, it presents the largest impact to the building, and while sympathetic to the applicant's desires, staff is not convinced that an alternate accessible entry that utilizes the existing west side ground floor entry is not possible. Enhancing this side entry with similar means of modern material lighting, a canopy, and signage will prevent altering such a prominent character defining feature. Upon consultation with the city's ADA coordinator, Janet Schumacher, it was shared with BAR staff that significant exceptions to ADA standards exist for historic properties. The Americans with Disabilities Act guidelines note, if it is not feasible to provide physical access to a historic property in a manner that will not threaten or destroy the historic significance of the building or facility, alternative methods of access are permitted. In addition, the accessible entrance does not have to be the primary entrance used by the public. And last, the addition of mechanical equipment to the roof is pushed as far from the street as possible and screened. The addition of a rear stair, which is differentiated and recessed from the side walls, may not be visible. The remainder of work tends to be restorative, with possibly the exception of the window pair on the west elevation closest to Calhoun Street, where it appears the original openings were for two separated smaller windows. Therefore, staff had much deliberation. We find ourselves very sympathetic to the request. We're appreciative to the cause of the Knights of Columbus. We're excited about the work that's being done on the building, but fundamentally, we're going to err on the side of preserving the stairs. And so we're recommending denial of alterations to the main front entry stair with encouragement to study accessibility through the west entry and conceptual approval for window alterations, mechanical equipment and screening, and for the rear stair addition.
Opportunity for an applicant response.
Sure. First of all, I want to thank the conservation groups for meeting with us. I think we would be happy if y'all supported the application. We would certainly accept the deferral to restudy the storefront if you feel strongly about that. I wanted to mention two things. One about the entry element. One of the things that has to be done, and I mentioned this in my application, but the bid clarification, you know that this has to happen no matter what. Get back to the photograph. To show you. As you can see, at the top of the stair, there's no landing right now. But that's the original opening of the original front door. It's not the original front door or the transom, but it's the original location. One of the things that has to happen no matter what we do to the building is that entry element has to get pushed back so that there's a landing at the top of the door. The rail that's in the center of the stair has to go. That's not original, but it needs to go. So there has to be some modification done to that entry element, whether it becomes the accessible entrance or not. And that probably needs to be kept in mind in deliberation. And then I'll just leave you with equity. I know we all know that there are alternatives for historic buildings. And we've used those solutions. I've used those solutions many, many times to create accessibility for historic buildings. But this is the first time I've ever worked with the original owners of the building. And the original owners of the building being a charitable organization that serves disabled people. And so this is a little bit unique, I would say, in the scheme of things, because they built the building and now they're saying, maybe we weren't thinking about the disabled when we built the building in 1907, and now we need to consider that. So thinking about equity and making sure that those people that arrive to that building that can't enter the building feel like they've been treated equitably. Thank you.
Okay. Board discussion.
Chairman. Ashley. Just to make sure that I'm not miscommunicating. The staircase on the front of the house, front of the building is the original staircase.
That's right.
I appreciate your comments about the landing at the top and future modifications that may need to be made to that, but that would be part of what you would be drawing and bringing back here. Mr. Chairman, I'm not comfortable like piecemealing this, moving it forward, and so I'm okay even for a deferral if we wanted to just restudy it, not denial, but I can't lose the charge that we've been given here. We can't tear out a primary staircase from this building, in my opinion. The rest of the work, fine, right? But I can't support that, but I also could support a deferral. Thank you.
Comments? Well, I'll jump in quickly. I agree with you, James, that this is the kind of work that both of us do in our practices in balancing the needs of not only the building code but accessibility guidelines vis-a-vis historic fabric is always a very delicate balance. And the proposed option C is entirely antithetical to best practices in preservation, and it's not necessary at all to comply fully with the ADA guidelines. Option A is entirely consistent with ADA guidelines. And the fact that the door is immediately adjacent to the building doesn't mean that you're being less equitable. You're just taking a few extra steps. That's literally it. We deal with this question from time to time with charitable organizations, museums, with churches, all of which have steps into the front door. And we really can't go about ripping up historic fabric to this extent for this purpose. When the law, civil rights law of ADA and the building code are both written with multiple areas, provisions that allow you to accommodate accessibility without undermining the historic integrity of the building. I mean, we could defer it, but I would want the applicant to be very clear that option C is untenable.
I agree. Totally agree with removing the stair and changing the entrance. It's totally actually changes the character of this front facade altogether. And you know, originally that landing was as is, and the only thing I kind of like on the C is the side windows, which got back to the original photograph which we're seeing, so at least that could be probably looked at. But so we will defer. That means we are kind of in agreement of proceeding with that restarting of the C, but it seems like that doesn't work at all. So A is with some alterations with probably windows on the basement or whatever ground level. To me, it's most acceptable at this point. So
This package has come to us several times and offered 3 different options. I think it's important to note that we're not looking at multiple options, we're looking at one. It's the option labeled option C in the packet. I think I've been fairly forward in previous meetings about maintaining the historic integrity of any structure. But the applicant is correct in that they are working with the original owner of the building. And that in 1907, we were not looking to build buildings that were accessible to people who need the additional help. The equity component is really what I think is most important here, and it can be managed in a reasonable way. But not being able to go through the front entrance and it being earlier stated that another entrance is just a few steps away, for these folks, it's not a few steps away. And can be likened to other entrances that were required of other people at different times in our history. I think that we have a unique opportunity to look at the historical significance of the facade of the building and know that the vast majority of the structure is intact, if not celebrated. Personally, being in the Knights of Columbus when I was an undergrad, going to different functions that we had there, we took plenty of pictures on those steps, and yes, they will forever be in my memory, but they don't necessarily need to be there moving forward to ensure a sense of equity in architecture. 1907 is very different than 2023. And I think that adjustments can be made that are appropriate to show that.
Any further comment or motion?
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion. I don't want to discuss it a little bit.
Okay.
I'm okay with deferral, but if the staircase comes back, that I'm not okay with the staircase. So we can make a motion for denial, but the bulk of the project work, they need to identify what windows are going to be resecured on the east side, on the west side. That needs to be in the plan, but overall, the rest of the work seems okay. So let's just talk about that a minute.
So staff's recommendation was a split motion.
Yeah, I saw that, and I'm in the past, I've never been supportive of split like that, so I won't make that motion. Well, I'll make a motion for denial of the project.
A wholesale denial or just? I mean, I think one thing that might be helpful is to, if it's being denied for a specific reason, let's articulate that, and then other aspects of the project that may come back in the future are.
Well, the front stair.
Okay, denial of removal
Of the front stair.
of the front stair.
That's right.
Okay, so that speaks to one aspect of the proposal, the stair itself, but just in discussion, I might suggest that we add with board comments regarding all of their aspects of the proposal or something like that, so it doesn't.
But there's options, you know, this is what makes it tough. There's A, B, C. And so I don't have a good solution for how to navigate
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, well, I was thinking more towards the window alterations and mechanical screening, things like that.
Well, with board and staff comments, sure.
Okay, all right, so your motion, as I've reported it, is denial of removal of the front stair with the board and staff comments. That seem. We have a second for that. Use seconds. From staff's perspective, do you feel like that is actionable? You feel like you understand what we're talking about here?
My understanding is we're not gonna be looking at the front stair removal if a package comes forth for preliminary, but we'll look at everything else.
Okay, all right.
Correct.
I know that's not the desired outcome, but is this clear enough from the applicant's point of view? Okay, just wanted to verify that before we move to a vote. And so I'll call the roll on a motion for denial of the removal of the front stair with board and staff comments. Mr. Brown, how do you vote?
No, not in favor.
Mr. Metters, how do you vote?
Yeah, in fact,
Ms. Subject?
Yeah, in favor.
And I vote yea in favor. The motion carries 3-0 or 3-1. 3-1.
Okay, moving on to application number 2. It's 31 George Street and 84 Society Street. You know, let's give me a minute.
Well,
There wasn't much noise and then there was.
Okay. Thank you.
That's not just good.
All right, 31 George Street and 84 Society Street, this one is new construction. Height district is 6 and in the old and historic district. This request is for preliminary review of 2 buildings. Building A on George Street, a 6-story building with sub-level parking, and building B on Society Street, 6.5-story mixed-use building with a 50-key hotel and amenities on floors 1, 2, 3, and 7. Residential units on floors 4, 5, and 6. Aerial for you, this property is, it abuts George and Society, and it's between King and Meeting. And we've got photos from George Street and Society Street. George. It's like talking through these. George Street, project properties on your right. And Society Street with property on your left.
Applicant has the floor.
Thank you. My name is Mark Potemkin from Potemkin Architects. Nice to be back. As you all know, last month our project was deferred. Wanted to come back as quickly as possible while things might be still fresh in your memory. We recently had a conversation with staff, a lengthy meeting, kind of going through those items. Hopefully we've kind of attended to. Sort of in summary, I think a lot of these were kind of detail oriented and just more of sort of clarifications. But hopefully we've alleviated those this time around. So there's architecturally, there's a few small changes that you might be able to know. One is that the cornice on the front facade, the first cornice at the street level, that's actually been cut back. Previously, I think it was a dimension of 5'2", been cut back 2 feet, so it's more sort of smaller. Also, the main entrance, previously we had kind of a semicircle entrance. That's actually been sort of semi-arched so that it kind of mimics both the Juliet balconies as well as the awnings at the storefront. So I guess what I could do is I could go through, let's see, the actual sort of items here, and we can kind of, I guess, our sort of verbal response. So I think one of the questions that we had was about EFS elements that were being utilized. I think there was a note on that. Those have actually been removed from the project. Stucco at the top level will be a proprietary, it's a 3-coat, I believe it's called a Stowe power wall or equivalent. And the details in the set have been adjusted accordingly. At the grade level, where the entry doors were recessed, the cast stone and the detailing should be wrapping into the recess. And I think we've shown some associated details that kind of show how that works. That specifically, that's on A43. There was also a question about the single light door might sort of prevent some alignment issues on the buttons between the fixed panels and the operable doors. So I'll kind of go to that. Been addressed and fixed. So previously, I believe this has been sort of realigned in the front door. So these buttons now are kind of in line as they weren't previously. So those have been adjusted. Let's see. So again, the sort of the awning at the main entry is quite deep and has that sort of semicircle. That's been resolved to kind of be more of a semi-arched. The proposed materials, sidewalk materials represent 3 different materials on this block. Bluestone, which was identified in the drawings, that is not for this block. And so the sidewalk material has been revised to match the material typical within the block. That's been changed on landscape plan. Further into the set, but that has been resolved. Applicant to confirm the distance between the upper awning and the cornice at the street level and the street tree planters. So that's actually where we pulled that back. Now we have 7 feet here. Let's see. And then I think the other item that I just wanted to kind of address, which was there was some asked to sort of clarify the garage entry on the George Street on the proposed side in relationship to the oak tree. So the oak tree, I believe right now we have an arborist that's been brought on board into the project. The TRC is going to be commenting and reviewing that. And then I think once the TRC makes their recommendations, the plan will be developed and that will be kind of presented, I guess, at final the next step there. Let's see. Sorry, I apologize. Going through these items, I didn't know if it's more beneficial to kind of go through all of these or just kind of.
A targeted approach to responding to what we said last time is always a good idea.
Okay, good. That's what I didn't want to bore anyone. So that was kind of the address of the 3-dimensional condition, just to kind of understand, in particular, that the same sort of architectural integrity is being pulled along that area. The other piece that I wanted to kind of talk about was, I think the one was sort of the discussion around the hyphens. So this kind of connected area here. Now those were going to be resolved. Previously, we were adding the additional material with the stucco there. Now we're kind of carrying the brick across. And so I think it actually kind of makes a more subtle transition between those 2 pieces. And I think kind of carries it over the.
Can you point to what you're talking about right now?
Yeah, so originally, this is sort of the hyphen, it's sort of the connection of the 2 pieces of the mass. What we were doing before, it's still a recess, but before we were kind of making it more of a vertical element. And so I actually agreed with your comments previously, which was to kind of have a more consistent material come through that. And that's been reflected around all sides of the building. show you. So this is how we had it previously. And now it's been sort of, this was, I think, last in our deferred, and then this is how it kind of gets carried across there, which I think is a considerable improvement. I believe that there were some questions about the metal panels, those being dark up at the top. Those have actually been lightened. We do have some material samples that are here for you to take a look at. And we also wanted to give those to staff. We submitted those with our presentation to kind of help along with that. Let's see. And then finally, there was a question about the applicant should confirm if the windows at the top floor have been reduced in size or just regridded. In fact, the windows on the top floor, they have been pulled up. The sill has been pulled up. That's because we have a step back in the building, and so we need positive drainage from that window there. So we need a little bit of a curb. However, the sort of the proportions and the fenestrations are consistent throughout. Also, I have a feeling from the elevation from the street facade, that's going to be negligible in terms of actually see.
And just actually, the placement of the window in the jam itself, it was difficult for me to tell. Is it moved out some? Or is it
The
same
on the top floor
throughout
has it been pushed up?
or pushed out, like where it is placed in the jam itself?
I believe
Is it in
it's
the same place?
it's in the same place, yes. I don't think there has been any change in that. Is there a section that you were referring to?
Yeah, I was looking at it earlier today.
Okay. I'm happy to go through it if you like. So that is building A. I apologize, we're gonna have to do this race through to get to the other side. Building B has less comments, so those will be great. It's easier to get through. There we go. So again, this was some of the comments. I think at the last meeting, we kind of had a dialogue about Juliet balconies being applicable here. I think we landed that comment was actually removed at that time. So then I think one of the questions was considering some of the brick coursing and how that has been considered around windows and openings in the pilaster. So it has been reviewed and adjusted accordingly around the windows. One thing I did want to point out though, is that the brick is actually sort of inset between the pilasters. So it's kind of framed in, so we're not actually turning a corner per se. But those elements have been reflected in the drawing. Again, there was a comment about the EVIS. And then the other conversation with regards to this was really about, I believe, the landscape, the parklet that we were proposing. And so there was a question about sort of clarifying what that is. So I just wanted to, be clear. So the outdoor garden, it's meant to serve as kind of an event space that services the hotel as well as public function. So those elements kind of show the idea is that it could be for larger gatherings or for more sort of infinite or sort of reception, small events. And then, of course, daily garden, which the part on the left is kind of the condition that would be most of the time throughout that. And so those are sort of the comments that we addressed. What I'm hoping is that you guys allow us to move to the next step, and any of the items that are still perhaps detail oriented can kind of take place during construction documents. And I believe the final BAR we submit that. So thanks for your time.
Thank you to the applicant. Any member of the public wishing to be heard on this agenda item? Seeing none. City staff comments or recommendations?
Okay. I'm gonna talk about the B. Just kidding. I just wanted to say you can't when I said that. Okay, so the first comment that you're gonna see on the slides is just staff wanted to reserve the right to comment on any of the sample board. I don't have any comments. And then to society, as well as for our narrow, quiet streets and street trees are desired. However, please confirm their locations through zoning as they appear to encroach the 10-foot sidewalk minimum. However, the sidewalk depth is determined by the location of the existing building on society. So I hope the street trees stay. Just wanted to confirm that with zoning as far as sidewalk depth. And then we're recommending preliminary approval with board and staff and comments.
Very good. The applicant has an opportunity to respond if you feel like you need to.
That's great.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, very good. Board discussion and a vote on this agenda item.
I had a quick look at the sample panel and I generally agree with staff. One thing I would note though is, and you might, I don't, maybe had trouble finding a sample of the material, but there's at least one piece on the board that's actually a 3D printed facsimile of what you actually intend. Now, you're not intending to put 3D printed stuff on there.
That is absolutely correct. So we were wanted to create the profile.
Okay, so the profile is nice to see in life size, but we see the material is proposed for it. Is that on the board?
That material, which material would that, then that's that finish.
That's done. Okay,
Sorry for that.
yeah, otherwise I agree with staff's comments.
Further board comment? No comment, emotion.
I'll introduce a motion for preliminary approval with board staff comments.
There's a second. Fails for lack of a second. Is there another motion? If there's no comment.
Give a little more time for that second. Somebody else spoke up.
Oh,
You can renew it if that was the case.
I reintroduced my motion for
Preliminary
preliminary with board and staff comments.
Very good.
Mr. Chairman, I was out for one of the two presentations, and so I'm hoping somebody else will vote second.
I second.
The motion's in proper order. I'll proceed down the roll. Mr. Seaton, Mr. Brown, how do you vote?
Yeah, in favor.
Mr. Metters.
Yeah.
Ms. Sobchak.
Yeah, in favor.
Mr. White.
Yeah, in favor.
And myself abstaining, passes 4-0. Thank you to the applicant.
Thanks.
Agenda item number 3, 34 Race Street, Greek Orthodox Church.
All right. This one is a category 1 building in the west side neighborhood. It was constructed in 1952 by District 2.5. This one is a landmark overlay property, and they are requesting approval for a new fence and gate in Congress Street.
There he is. All right, we knew you would appear.
I was helping my young architectural friend out the door right there. I'm Dinos Leolia. Thank you so much for hearing our application. I am representing the Greek Orthodox Church. We are attempting to complete a fencing along Congress Street. Our approach is quite simple. We did a simplified representation of the existing fence. The only changes that are really being recommended is the omission of the half circle ornament that you see there toward the top, as well as square 3/4 inch pickets in lieu of the 3/4 inch dowel steel that is there now. Otherwise, all the hardware and everything else is going to be matching the existing. And we do thank staff for all of their assistance. Lawrence, thank you so much for everything. I will keep it brief, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Leolia. That's brevity is a virtue. City staff comments. Oh, public comments. Seeing none, city staff recommendation.
This
I
is
was
a-
clairvoyant. I didn't
You
think
were.
this was gonna cause an issue.
All right, as I said, this is landmark property individually listed on the National Register of Historic Places. The existing historic fence along Ray Street is simple in form and design with only a half circle flourish at the pickets below the top rail as a decorative element. The proposed new fencing along Congress Street consists of similar sized steel pickets, horizontal rail and bottom bar stack welded to a 2x2 metal post and anchored to piers with appropriate hardware. The gate is similar with appropriate hardware. Staff finds the new fencing compatible yet appropriately distinguished from the existing historic fencing. Applicant should confirm material for the 2x2 posts as there may be conflicting information on the packet. If not, still there is concern about galvanic action between different materials. So we're recommending approval of the new fencing as submitted with the clarification on the 2x2 posts.
Thank you, Tori. And you don't have to respond, Mr. Leolia, but on item number 6, anything about the steel and galvanic action?
We will investigate that further and make sure that we have sufficient. Thank you.
Very good. Board discussion and a vote on this agenda item.
So, Mr. Chairman and Dino South, I went out there and looked at it, and this is all fine, but concerning number 6.
Yes, sir.
Also the fasteners of the metal into the masonry. If that could be something that is going to resist corrosion over time, and then you won't have some of the issues that exist on the rest of the fence now and most masonry fences in Charleston.
Duly noted. Yep, thank you. Good. Make sure it holds up. Further board comments? Is there a motion?
Move for approval.
Okay, move for approval of fencing as submitted
With staff comments.
and incorporating staff comments. Very good.
Board
Is there, and board comments. Is there a second? Mr. Brown seconds. It's in proper order. Ms. Sobchak, how do you vote?
Yeah, in favor?
Mr. Brown?
Yea in favor.
Mr. Metters? Myself, yea in favor. Thank you, Mr. Leo.
Thank you, sir.
Agenda item number 4, 40 through 46 Market
All
Street.
right, this one is a new construction project, Height District 3.5, Old and Historic District. The applicant's requesting preliminary approval for a new hotel. And we've got contact slides for you. This property faces North Market and also Game Yard and Rivers Alley. And then that's the Rainbow Market on the left in pink that is incorporated in this project. And it's down there on your right in this one. And then this is kind of at Game Yard Alley with Rivers to the right. And from Rivers. No, got the two streets mixed up. And then this is from Anson looking back towards the property. Thanks.
Good, Mr. Bello.
Hi, everybody. I'm Eddie Beller with Bello Garris Architects and also from the project team's Katie Thorpe with Raven Architects, who has been putting up with my red lines. So we got conceptual approval back in March, and there were no design directives. It was mostly concern about how the project would be developed in detail, particularly the laser screen wall. So I'll go quickly, and you guys can ask me questions. All right. So you guys have the site. Get through this fairly quickly. One thing, just to remind everyone, we do have a historic building on site, 40 North Market, that we're gonna restore and repair. No major changes to that building other than some minor things where it's already been altered. And of course, Rainbow Market, that facade was approved. The stuff behind it was approved for demolition last time, and we're just retaining that one facade. Won't get into too much conceptual issues, but just to remind everyone, when we approached this design, we looked at other commercial streets in Charleston and compared to, say, Broad, parts of King, parts of Meeting, that have very formal, very more homogeneous context and consistent architecture. The market itself, if you look at it, is very different. There's one thing, there's not a lot of historic buildings there, which was surprising to me when I really looked at it. It's very diverse in scale and form and materials. And we all know the market, it's very funky, it's very different, right? And so we took that, there's a little bit of inspiration as we did the design. Already gone through conceptual, but just kind of want to keep that in mind as we go through development. Site plan, a couple things to remember. We do have a hotel being proposed on Anson Street, which is how we share our auto access. There are two separate hotels. They do not do anything else together except for that drive entrance for the cars where they park coming off of Anson and park under our hotel on Ravers. Here is the preliminary site plan. Another thing to point out, we do have a garden on the north Yard Street facade. That's not changed from last time. That's just a little bit more developed. And I'll talk about floor plan change in a minute. One minor change. Here's the garden that we have. So two things. One thing on the conceptual plan that's changed from last time. So this is before. What we had was, here's the historic wall. All the red is historic that we're keeping. We used to have an entrance into the heated space right here, but now it's changed. Where we have a courtyard here, both sides, so you come into a courtyard. And so that's not that different from the outside from the VAR standpoint, but it does change how we experience that space a little bit. We think it's a really good change. I'll go through the floor.
That whole section is new construction, right?
What's that?
That's all new construction.
That's right, everything behind it, James.
Yeah.
All of this.
Yeah.
All in, but yeah, this is not.
Right.
And that's really not different. So I'm just gonna go through these very quickly unless y'all have need for them. It really hasn't changed much from conceptual other than really kind of figuring out the details. The majority of the height, majority of the mass, all that's like 100 feet back from North Market and and like I said last time, we looked at Hanson Borough. One of the things we were kind of intrigued by is Fig Ivy and how that works as a planar element on a facade versus this continuous plane. How do we respond to an existing sort of building as a ruin? One of the charges we got from our client was we're facing due south. How do we mitigate solar gain and kind of a filtered light line? Materials, this isn't really, should switch this out, but we're going to use zinc panels for the majority of the building mass in the back, painted brick on some parts of it, and then restoring that front wall. So again, keeping this wall, we're just reminding everyone, this wall has been altered significantly over the years. I don't think any of those openings are original. I know the windows on the either side are not. It's got two types of brick, concrete block and cinder block. Top part's brick, the bottom part's stucco. So we're keeping the form. What's important is retaining the form, sort of celebrating that whole facade. This is a conceptual idea we did showing this facade as an element, this sort of monolithic screen, and then the building behind. Okay, so this is our current elevation. Really has not changed much other than developing it further. A couple of things that have changed. We don't have awnings anymore here. We used to have some canopies because you were going into the building. There's no need for it now because this is a really freestanding element. And we've also taken the screen, spent a lot of time on the screen, as you can imagine, and made it a little more dense in some areas. An updated rendering. A lot of our drawings are focused on the screens. We really want to get it right. Figure. I think what's important here, here's our existing wall. We've got at least 3 feet. It's actually not parallel, but at minimum it's 3 feet before you get to the screen. It actually expands almost to 4 at the eastern end. And then the wall itself is about 2 feet thick. So we are about 5 feet back when you get to at minimum 5 feet back when you get to the screen. Some other just details. So what we have is a tubular steel frame that supports this screen. It's very regular. The panels are very regular size. But the pattern itself is a sort of spreads over the panels. It's not the intention is for the remodeling. So this is probably the most important drawing set. So we've contacted a fabricator. We have already gone through the initial stages. Hopefully y'all were able to go out and see the sample that we put up. The intention for that panel, that sample was not just for you guys to look at, but it was for us. We wanted to confirm that the spacing of the panels was correct with the support behind it. And also we wanted to confirm that the joints and connections worked really well. The whatever color we end up, I'll talk about that at the end, but whatever color of the panel we end up with, the fasteners and the panels will be exactly the same color. They're pre-finished by the manufacturer. So just some more rendering to kind of remind you, most of the focus though is the detail. section, just showing how far back some of the things are in the front wall. The top of the, just to remind everybody, the top of the laser panel screen aligns with 40 North Market. And the openings align with the openings on 40 North Market. This is kind of interesting because it shows how that corridor works. I think it's a pretty nice space. Another view. Previous submittal and proposed. The only difference really is just the panels got a little more developed. We figured out how it really is going to be supported. Well, doing an elevator. Just a few. Going down Rafers, we again are going to restore and repair that building. There's three sort of buildings there, and then we have a new facade that steps up and sort of mimics that whole idea of the facade. This section, I'll speak through these specific questions. And here's where the primary materials are: zinc panels, and then we've got a facade that's brick, but it would be painted, some detailing in it. So we can kind of reinforce that facade idea. So a couple things I want to talk about here. So this is looking west, if you're standing on Ginyard. So when we started this project back in 2016, this project got approved by zoning and went through one round of VAR, not this design, but a hotel. And as part of that approval, the prior client had an agreement with a neighboring property owner for some conditions to be placed on the property. So when our client bought it, those conditions carried over to our property, even though the design was different. Most of those y'all don't even know about. We've already complied with them, but there are three that we had to comply with to go to VA, to take to VAR. Now, sorry, I have to sort of say this without looking at the attorney. But
Who's nodding along?
yes, thank you. But there are three things. One, we had to add flower boxes on the windows, actually it's windows and doors. I have flower boxes on the door, but flower boxes on the windows on Rafers and Ginyard. A waterfall feature, literally it's called a waterfall feature here. It has to be between the garage door and this area. And then the last thing is the garage door has to be a vintage barn door appearance. And so all three of those are subject to VAR approval. If the VAR denies them, then we're still in compliance. We don't feel like they're appropriate, but then we have to bring these to. We try to negotiate that with them. So here's what we had before. And here's what we have now. There have been some detail changes. You can't really tell in this elevation. The real changes are the barn door, this waterfall thing, and flower boxes that we added.
Mr. Bello, what is a waterfall feature?
I don't know. What we're showing is
An open spigot?
sort of I mean, it could be a hose hanging out the window, but it's what Katie found was sort of this fountain that you add to a facade that we would have some sort of, obviously, for fun, if you deemed that it was appropriate, we should have it. So we would detail that and staff approve it.
There's a photo of that.
I don't think it's in the set. Anyway, all right, we'll keep going.
That guy, that gentleman was at your last presentation.
He was.
Yeah.
Yes,
That's.
So anyway, I hate to even waste your time with it, but we have to do that. So just more renderings. This hasn't changed that much, other than again detailing. Was last time was. And again, I can go through the details if you'd like, but just really thought through these. Got that pretty thick wall facade separate. Some more how the louvers work, how the cornice works. This is the west facade, again, prior and proposed. This would not be seen at all because there's a building that's proposed as part of, our clients can build up on that one. We understand that if this isn't built, we have to come back to be. So materials, so this is a little misleading. The idea is that the brick would be some color like this. This is showing the brick that's that color, but it'd be painted dark for the windows. Zinc, which is a wonderful material, it'll patina, and it'll have a lot of variety for the majority of the massing of the building in the back. And then here we're showing the laser screen is gray. That's what y'all saw in the sample if you went out there, but as we've thought about it and seen it, we're thinking that probably, and all the renderings show it as white. Here's a view, we can barely see it, but we're sort of thinking it may ought to be sort of an off-white, buff color, not gray. Which is what we're thinking to do. That's it.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Bellin.
So hey, let me ask you a question, page VAR 53.
Detailed questions.
Yeah, I mean, Drew, it's just, I'm just interested in this one.
Yes.
You really, is that gonna end up being a little kind of a built-in gutter on the top right in that square?
Say that again, James. What are you asking?
You see where the picture is, just to the left of that, is that actually a little built-in gutter section right there?
Yes. Yes. There's a built up, it's just like a parapet here.
Yep, I see it. And the water just gonna go and then go into that gutter.
It should be, I don't know that we have an interior drain. We originally had those. Do we still have those? So there's an internal drain system.
No, I was just.
Not one now.
Yeah, that's a tough detail.
It is.
I think Tori has.
Two questions. The spacing between the building to the west and the end of the screen, what is it? 3 feet? You know the spacing, where the gap is?
Question? I'm sorry, Tori.
Like if you're facing the front and you've got that gap just big enough for a person between your building and the one to the left. Do you know about how?
Being on North Market Street?
Yeah, sorry, sorry.
We're right up against the property line.
On the property line?
Yeah,
So
and
what's
there's,
the-
I don't know what that space is. It's probably 2, 3 feet, maybe.
Okay. I'm just asking in relation to, I know that's a block wall, and so I just was wanting to understand visibility from where the screen is, but it is the property line. And then the second question is related to the opaqueness of the pattern. Do you think that the detailed elevation of the pattern on page 36 matches the renderings, say, like on 40 and 42? Is it the same
Should.
Yeah,
representative?
it's
Okay.
the same pattern, it's just probably with shadow may look more solid or.
Okay. Okay,
I will say it's been a challenge
yeah, I'm sure.
to render and draw this and show it in 3D and everything else. It's been really hard thing to do. So
I'm
it's
sure.
not something you
And then your line weights, I mean, everything's gonna affect the way it appears,
It's
okay?
difficult, yeah, to represent, it,
It
which
will
is
do
again why we want to put it up on the
We'll
building.
do by hand, you will be fine.
Yeah. But, yeah. Okay, any other?
I think.
Any other questions from staff or the board at this time? Thank you, Mr. Miller. Any member of the public wish to be heard on this agenda item? Seeing none, city staff
Okay,
comments, recommendations.
so first of all, we're most appreciative of the mock-up, found that to be very helpful. Number one, the framing or edges of the individual laser cut panels dominate the screen design and compete with the organic pattern, considering more opaque pattern while balancing the necessary light to pass through the screen. And two, a little bit of a bigger item for me. The perception of the color of the laser cut screen may be affected by weather as well as the reflective properties that it has. So the board should deliberate on colors. It has, to me personally, appeared green both in the photo, and I did go by it today and I felt like it had a green tone until you almost got past it, and then you notice it was like, oh, it's a reflective material. But anyway, whatever undertones that has, blue, green, are going to need to be considered in light of the warmer grays and creams that are in the material palette. And then last, I've already asked the question about that spacing. That was comment number 3. Number 4 is window boxes at upper levels are not typical. And these, along with the decorative water feature, at least as proposed, are incongruous with the architectural direction. Omit the flower boxes and water feature and omit the barn style door for consistency with the remainder of the ground floor at Gagnon Street and Rakers Alley. we're recommending preliminary approval with board and staff conditions.
Thank you, Tori. Any response from the applicant?
Well, just, the one about the more opaque pattern. When we met with Tori and Lawrence, they brought that up, and I think that's a really good idea. And I think as we study it, a little more opaqueness is good. Before we had a building behind it, now it's open, so I think that would, I think you would see less of the structure, which I think is good. As far as the color, again, I said that I'm not sure that we're happy with the gray. I don't think it's terrible, but I think we just want to study that too. And what I would propose, if it's okay with the board, is obviously we're going to have a sample panel at some point. When we have all of the colors of the building, front stucco, we can present that all at once then, and we can kind of look at it together.
On the sample, on the mock-up? I maybe misunderstood what.
Well, what I'm thinking is, James, so I don't know what the actual, I mean, I've always said gray. I don't know if this will be gray, but when we figure out what this color is, building color, we can present that then with the rendering, and you can kind of look at that with the materials.
Makes sense to me. James, just a good question, one more. For me.
So when we looked at the demolition, did it include the demolition of like the last 2 or 3 feet of the east side of the south facade?
Yes. Yes, none of that's changed.
So it gets cut, because right now those buildings connect.
Board discussion. Questions or vote?
I agree with staff conditions and the recommendation.
I think the project's coming along nicely, and I don't take exception to the notion of doing a color and material palette all at one time. That makes sense. We understand it's still playing out, especially with something that's a little novel. Given the applicant's track record of this project, that doesn't give me a heartburn. I do think that the imposed elements, the barn door, et cetera, Tori's comments regarding those are appropriate. Should probably be incorporated in this board's recommendation from my view. Further board comments?
So in the exceptional privilege, sure the recording would show, I couldn't get my head wrapped around the screening, and talked about the fact that moving it forwards general architectural direction, but until we really see it, what it's going to be like, I didn't want to be bound by that. And I still have trouble. I mean, Eddie, you're going to laugh and not laugh, but have trouble with thinking about the Charleston Tech Center and just the way that we have this massive, piece of steel, aluminum, whatever it is, and that's what we see and what we continue to see. And while that's not by any means what we're looking at here, still, I just can't see this screen being introduced behind that as a architectural feature on Market Street. I mean, it doesn't make, I don't understand it, and and then is it I mean, I'm trying to get my head wrapped around, is it something that's I mean, is there a purpose for it other than architectural? Like if it were up on a roof, is it covering an AC system, or is it I don't know. But if it's just for you've got that front facade, and then you've got a space, and then you're going to walk into that open area, which I think is nice also. I just can't, I don't know, that just doesn't fit to me on Market Street, so I'm just throwing it up. Yeah, please.
Well, one thing that's changed since the original, I'll get back to it, James.
The conceptual.
Yeah, or at least from the original idea, was we had a fairly consistent facade behind it. And now we have this building that's asymmetrical, a mass that's behind it. So the screen it's a screen. It screens all of that. I mean, I understand what you're saying, but there is a purpose for the facades. Part of it is just trying to unify what's happening on the street.
And so to be clear, the balance of the project, I think, I'm on board with, but I still struggle with the fact that we're introducing a screen on Market Street. And it's,
And I'm not arguing with you at all, but just for my perspective on it, we've got this, we agreed that mainly because of age and not a whole lot of other reasons it was important to maintain this facade. You know, and so we're maintaining that. And then, like so many other projects we see, we've got this dramatic upstepping, which is going to be, viewed from a prominent streetscape. And how do you resolve that condition? It's difficult to do when you've got this very shallow facade, which literally consists of a brick wall, right? You're not even talking about one room deep, like some other projects where we've been able to do that. And so, it's literally filling a void between a historic facade and, what is obviously new construction. So that's how I reconcile it in my mind. I don't expect you to agree, but it's a difficult site condition if this board feels compelled to protect facades as a general proposition, historic facades as a general proposition.
And so this may be a good question for you too, Eddie, then, because I don't view that screen as like a stabilizer for the front facade. That front facade can be stabilized in many different ways without seeing that screen cascade up there above it. But I got your point. I got it.
Personally, I think then you introduced the courtyard, suddenly you created the garden. And so there's two walls, one historic and one contemporary, which started to be a garden wall. And it's progression going into this building. And so it's meeting all the new. And the screen wall is actually, it's a static metal wall, but it has organic plant design on it. So it is a step forward to get to that building. And personally, I think cleaning the front facade is just clean punches, really symmetrical, one color, one material is looking really good. As far as the obvious conditions which you had to meet, the flower boxes and water feature, that is kind of inappropriate there altogether with this whole design. So, right now I support this whole approach, whole design, and ready to approve for preliminary.
Further board comments this time? None, a motion?
I'll introduce a motion for preliminary approval with board and staff conditions.
Is there a second?
I second the game.
Okay, so proper order. The motion is for preliminary approval of this project with board and staff conditions. It's in proper order, so I'll go down the roll. Mr. Brown, how do you vote?
Yeah, in favor.
Mr. Metters,
Nay, not
Mr. Sobchak,
Yeah, in favor.
Mr. White,
Yea in favor.
myself, yeah, in favor.
Thank you.
Thank you to the applicant.
Just to clarify, I know you've already voted, but so that staff conditions, is that's preliminary.
The
board.
staff
We have to
condition,
come back for final.
Correct. You have to come back for final, and also to be clear, I think from board staff comments, the orange style door, the water feature, et cetera.
yes.
Okay.
Thank you. You're on.
So 135.
Right at the end.
135 Meeting Street is the Gibbs Museum. This building is rated a 2 on the survey. It was constructed in 1905. Height districts 4 and 6 in the Old Historic District. The request is for exterior signage on the front and side facades. All right, context, we've got the aerial for you here. Image from Meeting Street. Projects on your left. And on your right.
Applicant has the floor.
Thank you very much. I'm Ben Lenhart. I live at 37 Church Street. And I'm a member of the board and co-chair of the Building and Grounds Committee at the Gibbs. It is this committee that considered the signage that we'll talk about. There are two things that we are asking for your approval. The first is in this image, you will see that there are two banners on either side of the small windows on the entrance. They are affixed via I will call it a towel bar arrangement for as a layman. But we have Rick Pasfa from Duncan Parnell here who can talk all about the intricacies of putting this up. The banners, the purpose of the banners is to obviously let the public know what wonderful exhibits that our president and CEO, who is here with us today, are putting on. And as you know, we have thousands of tourists passing by, but there's a large oak tree that also hides a portion of the building. And so, like many museums across the country, they have signage outside of or on the building for that purpose. So that's the purpose of that. The second sign that we're asking for is the small sign above the doorway that says Gibbs Museum of Art, which is the same as we presently have above the ADA entrance on the side. This is the image for the front. Let me see here if I can, or perhaps you could move if you could. This is on the ADA image. And then the next there, you will see the image of the banners. Unfortunately, due to some problems on our part, we would like for this to go to the coping, which begins right here. So it, rather than being 102 inches, based on measurements that I received this afternoon, it was 130. And to bring to the sides, to bring that out as well. So the image would be centered on that side. And you can see the mounting is over here. And to that, if you have questions, Rick can answer those. The next. Sir.
Another slide, or is that?
I'm not positive.
Because you want to see if there's any more?
Is that
That's it.
I believe that's everything.
right?
Very good.
Well, thank you very much. Any questions?
I do have a couple of questions about the mounting of banners. What sort of anchors, what sort of surface preparation?
Yeah, as in that, my name is Rick Hasma. I'm with Duncan Parnell, which is a sign and graphic company. Basically, yeah, we would screw with set screws into the facade, the metal plate, and like it's a towel bar design as he described it. The brackets go on. The plate, the banner, the pull pocket would be slid onto the 2-inch pull, and then that would be slid into place and screwed onto the bracket.
Okay, so the banners are semi-permanent. I mean, they can be changed out.
They can be changed
but they're
out,
not temporary.
Yeah, exactly. We have installed the same kind of banners at the Charleston Literary Society.
And we would expect to change it as we have exhibits, you know, in the course of a year, 3 to 4 times a year.
I think it's Library Society. So is it the Library Society?
Yeah.
Is, yeah.
That's what I was making a note about just now.
If it would please support, I do have
Oh
some
my.
pictures of those.
No, I'm familiar with
No,
that.
no, no, it's okay.
No,
You're not in trouble.
They need to be able to plead the fifth.
Yeah.
So,
They are on there
Yeah.
though.
Presently, all those banners are on the courtyard up front, right? You,
Excuse me.
presently, you advertise this exhibits.
Yes, we have one standing over, over here,
Right,
but it's much smaller and it's this live oak tree. It, encumbers it. We have the new sculpture, Fred Wilson, that is here. So we removed that. We had two signs before and they were smaller.
Further board questions of the applicant at this time?
yeah, Mr. Linhart and Ms. Mack, y'all love that building. No question about it, right? The use of banners or not, I mean, I think there's probably an appropriate way to install banners. I'm not a banner person, but I am, tonight, I would not vote to support this because the anchoring system into that building is critically important. You've got what can happen after spending $7,000, which is what I saw the cost of this project was, could lead to cracks emanating from those 4-inch holes that I read the plan that I guess you drill it in there and then some kind of anchor goes in there. But I mean, I'd like to know what that is. And Ms. Linhart, y'all should want to know what that is because every time one of those gets drilled in, I mean, it's a point of leakage. It's a point, I mean, regardless of how it gets installed, it's a hole in the building that doesn't go all the way through. But I mean, that's ultra important. I mean, and I think it should be stainless steel or it should be brass or bronze or something so that it's as timeless as the building is. And maybe you've taken all that into consideration, but if you haven't, on every building, but especially this building, it has to be because it's magnificent. I know y'all love it. So
We agree that with your concern, and we have hired Duncan Parnell to be the contractor for this. And we have also Joe Schmidt, who is on our Building and Grounds Committee. And with his help, if there's some different type of screw, I'll call it, or whatever, that needs to be, we certainly want to do that.
Well, and I think Joe knows. So I just hadn't seen it. That's not part of any of this application. And so
But let's hold on. Let's not put the cart before the horse. We're going to continue board comment, but let me just do this. Is there any member of the public wishing to be heard on this item? Seeing none. Let's go to city staff comments and recommendations, then continue the question.
All right, this building has a category 2 rating in the city of Charleston's architectural inventory. The banners are described as temporary features to be displayed only when special exhibits are displayed, yet this may be most of the time. And therefore the banners and hardware must be regarded as permanent fixtures, with the artwork being changed for each new exhibition. Staff is opposed in principle to the obscuring of any character defining features on this building, but as almost all of the exterior building fabric is character defining, it is difficult to ascertain where one might appropriately stop and start. If the board elects to allow the banners, the following should be considered. All right, conditions if approved. Staff was originally presented with the design in which proposed banner locations partially obscured the windows flanking the entry door, and these have now been shifted to the outsides of these windows. While creating an awkward relationship within the overall symmetry of the central massing of this primary facade, in a position partially blocked by ornate light fixtures, this may be the better position in that it allows a greater expression of the detailed rusticated base. So we've heard some other dimensions mentioned, but my note was to consider making the overall banner and hardware design narrower to fit more comfortably on that span between the window and the corner of the building. 2, it is unclear from the drawing what materials are being proposed for the letters above the entries. While not wholly opposed to this additional signage, applicant to provide additional information for these elements. And 3, if allowed, all new work should be easily reversible without damaging the building. This affects the proposed mounting hardware and their locations. So we're recommending denial of the banners and banner hardware and deferral of the signage above the entries for more information with the incorporation of board and staff conditions on either if approved.
So at this juncture, Mr. Lenhart, you can respond to the board and staff comments and feel free to do so. You will have the floor. But I think we're probably going to continue a conversation about where to go from here on this. That is, I think will be helpful to you, at least as I'm thinking in my mind. Would you like to respond to the city staff comments at this time? Don't have to.
Yes, I, not knowing exactly how all of your processes work, what we would like is for approval with staff approval of what you are asking. The signage size as well as the hardware. And one reason, I'm just being, fully transparent. We have a major exhibition coming on January the 25th. That is starting, and it's the Roy McCune exhibit. It's the Gibbs is it's a 2.5 year tour in the United States, and the inaugural exhibition is here at the Gibbs. It's coming from London, Kew Gardens, along with Oak Spring Garden Foundation in Virginia. And so, as have at least internally, we have seen some of the banners with images of that. And so we wanted to do this in advance of that. So we're happy to do whatever, but is there a way that we might accomplish this within that time frame?
Maybe. This is what let me say what I'm thinking, and then the other board members will come along, because we recognize that the Gibbs is an important part of the community and steward, and that you're trying to do this for appropriate reasons. But as this layperson, not an architect, can tell you, knowing a little bit of this and haven't seen this, a little bit about this application is incomplete, and that's through no fault of your own. We have some drawings that don't quite match up with the dimensions that you told us about. We probably need to see samples of the material that you want to use to the lettering, which I'm not opposed to the permanent installation lettering. Do you have one with you?
I do.
Okay. That resolves one part of it. What color would this be? The same
That
finish?
is brass, I believe.
The anodized.
Brush.
Yeah.
Pass that around. So I'm not opposed to the lettering, but considering that it's on the marquee building, we probably need to have a good discussion about that. Our policies are that we don't typically have a lot to say about things that are temporary. It would appear that while the banners themselves are being changed out, we would all agree that this hardware is going to be permanent or semi-permanent. The problem that Mr. Metters, as contractor, brought up is because you are pushing this into an existing facade with permeable porous materials. The exact specifications, drawings, et cetera, for how those anchors are going to be done, if they were going to be done, would unfortunately, at least in the light of the timeline being presented, need to be presented to the board, because we need to see those details with this facade. So my particular preference would be to lean to a deferral, not a denial, while we try to get these design details and specs worked out to see if this is appropriate, and the specs for what's trying to be done is appropriate, and that the image that we have reflects what we need to do. Personally, I'm satisfied with this lettering, but we probably need some information about the dimensionality and the depth of it.
And I don't think that this matches what's currently on the building either.
Yeah, and I don't know, because I haven't seen it.
It
So
doesn't, it's actually an improvement of what we already have on the building.
So then we would need to see if you're looking to swap out that signage as well, or then that would need to be part of the plan as
The
well.
current, because of funding issues, the current lettering is laminated, and therefore it's already peeling. And we would want to remove that and replace it with the solid.
okay. And I would like to add, for the benefit of the applicant, we shouldn't punish people for doing the right thing, because it sounds like we have some people who have not sought this board's approval for what is a semi-permanent installation. At least we're gonna do some research on that.
Well, Mr. Chairman, if I may speak,
Sure.
we truly appreciate your desire to protect the building. I mean, I'm sure all of you know, we work very, very hard to make it and put it in the state that it is in today. Any type of moisture issue is not going to be acceptable to me as the executive director. If there's any concern on that front in terms of the drilling, we need to understand that from day one and what that looks like.
Right, and so I'm unfamiliar with the stone, of course, natural stone that is on the facade or on all the facades of the building. Jay, you know?
It's limestone.
Limestone.
Probably a 4-inch
It's
veneer.
brick, it's actually brick.
There's not,
Yeah.
that's brick, okay, that's right.
This portion.
Okay, so, yeah, I mean, my comments on this is a category 2 building, so any alterations to it come before the board as a matter of ordinance. And it's the city's best Beaux-Arts facade, and it is very well maintained and preserved. But we have a very well articulated concern about what the mounting of these things might do to the facade of the building, but also the banners themselves are completely unsympathetic to the architectural character of the facade.
Yeah.
Just completely unsympathetic. And that's why at some point in the past, a marquee sign was placed out in the front. And I understand that y'all lost some of that square footage due to the art installation, but that's a much more appropriate way to tell the public what you're up to.
That's exactly why I asked about it. Because, and you start to reduce the size of the banner and you will have, me as a designer thinking, you will have a really difficult time to represent that particular artist because it will change and you are constrained to some sort of, size, and that's going to will not work very well, but yes, banner doesn't, as it presented, it's really contradicting the building altogether, and, the window next to it, it's suddenly blackened and I always, and then you don't see that as much because personally, I would see more in the courtyard of what you're advertising than on the building. So,
Perpendicular to the right of way, right? You see it more there than having to look over to the building.
exactly.
Yeah.
But if I could speak to your concern, we must, because as you know, the museum is a living museum, and we must get increased traffic and attendance. Because without that, the museum won't flourish. We've got fabulous exhibitions, and we need the visibility. That's why the Metropolitan Museum in New York, on a very distinguished building, the Art Institute in Chicago, you name it. It's museums across the country using banners. And the reason is simply to let the public know what's going on so that they can say, I want to go there. And yes, it's not what the architects who originally designed the buildings thought, but we're in the 21st century, and I would submit we need to find a way to get increased attendance.
I'm just afraid you will find these banners are not functional as you think you will, because the size of it and how it is, so it may need to be different approach altogether.
And it's probably worth noting, as we did at the outset of the meeting, that our charge is to preserve the architectural integrity of Charleston, and factors that y'all consider as building owners and philanthropists, such as attendance numbers and whether you're able to successfully advertise an exhibition. That we can't really weigh on that. It's whether this proposal is appropriate for the building. It's kind of it. You know, the fact that it might be a good idea to advertise in a more robust fashion is obvious, but it's not something that we really weigh in on.
Well, be that as it may, all I'm saying is for the purposes of the application tonight, we agree that we've identified a couple things that would need to make it a successful application if the board was willing to allow the installation. We've also identified the drawings and the specs that would be necessary that we don't have. Which again is why I was leaning towards a deferral as opposed to a denial to get those things squared away.
How would you feel about asking the applicant just to withdraw?
Well, because I don't know what the timeline is
Oh, I see.
for Tori,
So
but
that might-
I think we could probably get this on our next
I see.
agenda
I see.
if all the conditions were met.
I didn't know withdrawal would be a different schedule.
Withdraw, yeah, that would,
January 10th, and our next submittal deadline is December 18th.
so I'm
So-
trying to help that.
So a deferral is different than a withdrawal on the
Yes, sir.
time schedule. Okay, got it.
It could throw it right back on our next agenda theoretically.
Yeah.
So John, it's just want to make sure about just doing a deferral, we're not proving anything in the nature of it. That's what I'm not sure about.
Sure.
But also, if the purpose of this additional signage is for something that does have a deadline, then the applicant should be encouraged to think of creative ways to advertise outside of this if it is not approved.
That's right. And all I'm saying with the deferral is I don't, provided we need more information, I don't hear opposition specifically to the lettering part of the package. You know, if we have more information, we can go ahead and do that. Why make the applicant apply again if they can show, show us material, show us the sizes, make sure that we've got a drawing that conforms to it. If we can approve that piece while we have a continued debate about these banners, whether they're semi-permanent or temporary, how much, in addition to the specs we need, that would have the effect of helping rather than harming the applicant at this point with the timeline they're on.
So, say it one more time, because we're not approving anything.
We're not approving anything. We're saying it's a straight deferral that allows them to respond to the comments that we've made tonight, provide the specs, and potentially get an up or down vote at the next meeting. As opposed to a withdrawal or a denial, which would start the process all over again and not on a timeline that accommodates the need of the community stakeholder, which is not the only consideration, but the Gibbs have been good stewards in the community. And I think that's a deferral is a fair opportunity to either put these things in order or find out that it's not going to work.
I'm looking at the Metropolitan right now and it's temporarily. Very quickly.
So, Angela, just
It
calls
doesn't
out,
have to be, it can be hanged from the roof, I don't know.
this has no bearing on what we're talking about tonight, but it's my memory that it's kind of jointly owned between the museum and the city. Yeah.
Correct.
Okay. Yeah.
50-50.
50-50, yeah. And the owner of the city is the mayor. Yeah, right. That's what I remember too.
He is an honorary member of our board and appoints 2 city council members to sit on our.
Well, okay.
I didn't move it. It's just my recommendation. I can move if somebody wants me to.
Yeah,
Nothing prevents me to.
yeah.
I would move for a deferral incorporating board and staff comments to give the opportunity to get on our next agenda meeting if possible, if submission sort of met with particular attention to the concerns we've had about specifications and longer, short-term permanent damage to the facade.
And I'll second that.
Mr. Metters seconds. That's in proper order. Mr. Brown, how do you vote?
Yea in favor.
Mr. Metters,
Yeah.
Ms. Sobchak,
Yeah, in fact.
Mr. White.
Yeah, in favor.
And myself, yea in favor. Thank you to the applicant. Thank you for understanding our process. We will work with you as best we can to help you along this process.
Thank you very much.
All right. Agenda item number 6.
Right, this one is 120 St. Philip Street, formerly 15 Radcliffe Street. The building is rated 4 in Radcliffe Borough, constructed in 1885.
Oh.
The ordinance authority- Almost there. All right, the request is for repairs and additions to 120 St. Philip Street, previously known as 15 Radcliffe Street. And then we've got an aerial for you to orient you with the location of where the house has been approved for relocation to. And then the property would be on your right, and you're looking north on St. Philip. And south with the property on your left.
Thank you very much. Bill Schmidt, Evans Architects. I believe we've gone through and responded to all of the questions, concerns the last time. We debated this with staff and we've come to agree to disagree to some of it, but if you recall, I missed my last presentation because of the vice president coming to town, so my client has still not paid me, as he said he wouldn't do since he didn't have to be represented.
Mr. Brumley made it quite.
He was very clear.
Good presentation.
Yeah, he did. Excellent. We have gone to what the board had asked for, which I'm just, it is a battle between, concepts, but we're good. And that was, we wanted to have some differentiation of which site this was on, and this wasn't the original site. So the idea of not going back with brick for the foundation on the side and doing it in stucco so that it's usually more apparent that is a lesser material, which means this probably wasn't where it was originally. That's where I would have been the last time, but that's neither here nor there. We've worked it out with a structural engineer where we will be able to support the building, even though it's on a very shallow sill with CMU and then a brick veneer, as was requested. The front of the facade is, you might want to go through, was stucco on brick. We will be doing stucco on block on that, but we will be running block down the north side. We will be running brick piers down the south side, and that pretty much takes care of the foundation issues I think that came up the last time. We have the differentiation on the siding materials. The staff had suggested a different size siding for the addition versus the front. I lucked out on that. It was forgotten that the siding that's on the building is German novelty, and we're going to use regular flat siding of the same dimension. Just didn't like the idea of having a 10-inch siding on a 6-inch siding house or something of that order. We have removed the shutters on the back. We have made other alterations to the windows that were requested. What else? The issue with the back, I'm not sure why it looks like the screen porch got lowered. I believe that's a grade change. We did not have a token, we didn't know what that was. So it's actually looks lower to the ground. It wasn't, the house was moved. It's just, that's what the grade is doing at that location. So I believe that was the entire list of issues. It had more to do with just finishes and how we were handling them to differentiate the addition from the actual building itself. There's one minor change that was made. It did not come up before, but we are shifting a couple windows, but other than that, you wouldn't know now for sure. You won't know the difference between which location it was at. I just had to say that. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Schmidt. Any member of the public wishing to be heard on this agenda item? Yes, sir.
James Doyle, I'm the Vice President, Radcliffe Borough Neighborhood Association. Harkening back to the prior meeting, we left with a approval by a preservation plan being presented by the applicant. I wish I was going after you this time. If the staff is happy with the plan, then we're happy.
Then, which is to say, Mr. Doyle, you on behalf of the neighborhood are pleased with the
I'm
project.
speaking for the neighborhood, not for myself.
That's great. Thank you. Thank you for coming, Mr. Doyle. We appreciate that. City staff comments, recommendations.
Sure. So the previous review, staff noted additional differentiation between the new addition and existing house was suggested. Differentiation usually is found in material, siding exposure, window grid, or detailing. Also in profile, which this new information is representing a different profile of the siding between the portions. That being said, I'll read the rest of the comment. The detailing is simpler, but other elements remained unchanged as before. Applicant should confirm if this has been considered, and board should also consider if enough differentiation is proposed. This was a Charleston standard and is also found in the Interior Secretariat Interior Standards. Okay. And the second comment, fences are not out of context at this location, and a wood privacy fence already exists on the north property line. But as a privacy fence is proposed, pulling the portion that returns to the house back from the corner of the house would allow the house to be better articulated without the loss of any useful or functional outdoor space. I can point this out if needed. It is a suggestion. We already talked about it today.
Very good. And so, and your recommendation final.
That's wrong page. Just go back to that site plan. Yeah, this, I'm just recommending to pull it back so that we spoke about it today already.
Good. And your recommendation is final approval to staff.
I'm sorry. Our recommendation is final approval with board and staff comments with final review by staff of permit drawings. Thanks.
Thank you. Any response, Mr. Schmidt? Or comments?
For approval. The board staff comments.
And with final review by
Final
staff for
review by
permit
staff.
drawing? Is there a second to that motion?
I'll second that.
Okay, Mr. White seconds. Mr. Brown, how do you vote?
Need in favor.
Mr. Mathers?
Yeah, but
Ms. Sobchak?
Yeah.
Mr. White? And myself, yea in favor. Thank you.
Very much.
Agenda item number 7 has been withdrawn.
Correct.
Agenda item number 8, 145 Calhoun Street.
Right, this one is the structure is not rated. It's in a neighborhood. I just noticed that. It was the building. The building was constructed in 1955, but it is in the Old and Historic District. The request is for a new metal roof enclosure within the confines of an existing steel trellis that received BAR approval for clear plastic, but cannot be engineered to meet the code requirements. All right, and then Ariel, the building is outlined in red across from Marion Square. And then there's the steel trellis. And just a few different images of it. Thanks.
Hello, my name is Mike Nixon. I'm representing the applicant or the building owner designer. The original design, this was originally approved by the bar some time ago for what would be polycarbonate clear system that would go on inside the existing trellis. But when we went to go get it engineered and designed, actually construction, comes to find out that that panel system is only rated up to 125 miles per hour. And given that the height of this 3 stories, the occupants of it is over 300, so the risk category is 3. Wind speeds around 157, 160. We just, there was no way we were gonna be able to find a way to put this clear system on top of the trellis. So what we're seeking for is a metal, same system, same idea, concept that it'd sit inside the trellis, but it's gonna be an opaque metal roof system. I have a sample for that. So the biggest impact is gonna be actually the visibility of that trellis system, you know, seeing through it or the shade and the shadow.
Would you like to flip through the drawings? It helps just for the record.
You can see the area of trellis, which was in the roof area. So previously, this system here in green was approved, and the system in orange is what we're looking for. We keep the ends still open, kind of keep that somewhat honoring what was there before. And then the roof section would be all within that steel system. And then this is the sample of the structural drawing that got engineered, and we're able to get it attached to the existing system and resist the upload. Yep. And then also the wind speed. We'd introduce a gutter system on the leading edge that's hidden behind the existing steel beam, and then a downspout system that is hidden behind the existing columns, come down. So that's pretty much the presentation there.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Nixon.
And I have a.
Oh, I was gonna, sure, that'd be helpful, I think. While you're working to unveil that, is there any member of the public who wishes to be heard on this agenda?
This is the system that was set inside the existing steel structure. So you wouldn't see it from the street. I think the biggest effect of that, of putting this in here, is going from that translucent polycarbonate to a opaque.
So what's the proposed color?
White. It matched the steel. It's up there now.
Relative to me is open structure,
Yeah.
and this is just a roof.
Essentially. No member of the public here to comment, city staff comments or recommendations.
So the application was previously approved by the board with a polycarbonate glazing system, subsequently found to be inadequate to resist potential uplift loads. It formed a translucent roof at the existing trellis. The proposed aluminum panel system would be wholly opaque, fundamentally changing the architectural character of this roofing and structure from the previously approved design. Number one, while there are other systems that could conceivably provide translucency and meet wind load requirements, these would likely have a different mounting system and be different in execution than that which was previously approved. Two, staff finds the translucent approach to be compatible with the design of a trellis structure, but at this point believes that this is essentially a matter of whether the board deems the translucent approach or the opaque approach more appropriate in the situation. So staff defers to the board's finding regarding which approach is more appropriate here. I know. Well, it's almost like, here we are, this is what we have. I am not an expert in what roofing materials meet 157 mile per hour wind loads. But I do think the trellis was designed to be translucent and have light splashing through it. That is by definition what a trellis is.
Well, I was just gonna, do you have any response, Mr. Nixon? The applicant's allowed response.
No, I agree. The idea of the trellis and that whole system kind of being semi-transparent is different than putting a solid material. Those, they're actually like C channels, upside down C channels. They're actually pretty close together. There's not a lot of light coming through there. So there's more steel than air. So I don't know if that.
That's still light.
Yeah.
But it does still produce enough light and shadow coming through. You can see it in the.
Somebody can correct me on this, but my recollection was we allowed the translucent panel because it would provide some sheltering while still duplicating or not invalidating the effect of an actual open air trellis.
Yeah, that was good.
And I think that was kind of the consensus, and Mr. Nixon very kindly is agreeing, we were all on the same page about that. And so this is certainly not the fault of the designer, but it's the concept doesn't work because the material is not as good as the designer's vision. It's a different concept.
I think that's the design.
However, I'm gonna interject rudely, but does the trellis look like a trellis now? Does it need a roof?
I would say that, the trellis went through DAR itself and was a point of discussion way back then. And, the decision to put a covering over it and making it translucent was a logical response to maintain the quality of the design. And this downgrades the quality of the design.
What were you gonna say?
So when I'm looking back at the August meeting, where this came or last, there was an additional extension of this out over the other portion of the roof deck. Was that ever added?
No, that's not built. That's not part of this.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
So it's just limited to this existing trail.
So, so part of it's not built, or part of it is built, but you're not gonna add the metal roof to it, or?
So the existing trellis is there now. And the previous architect in the previous approval had an extension.
Yeah.
On the other roof deck to add more trellis. The owner is not going to go forward with that. What he wants to do is just change that he wants that area covered so that he gets more usable in inclement weather. In trying to find a roof system that meets the standards of a hurricane limit.
And therein, I think, is the problem, because this board, again, I can be corrected, provided the translucent material, not primarily furnish a roof. But, to make this accommodation that happened to have these translucent panels that still appear to be a trellis from street view.
And you'll have to forgive me. I'm just trying to understand. What is currently there does not meet code, but in design is the same thing that you're looking to replace it with.
No. What's up there now, it meets code. It's a full steel, painted steel trellis system.
Okay.
It meets code for a trellis.
Right.
The previous approval was for, I think it's called a Herculean polycarbonate panels. And, it's mostly a residential style material and, rated up to 125 miles per hour max. So neither the manufacturer, any structural steel, any structural engineer would sign off on approving that to be installed. So we're looking at alternate materials that work within that system and the hurricane rating.
As a roof.
That's what we, yeah, it was a.
Okay.
So it was a clear roof before, now we're looking at a.
Right, so this isn't really a new trellis.
No, it's a new change.
New metal roof enclosure. Okay.
So I believe, if I'm planning something and I'm presenting it, and I've worked through the facts and I know the assembly is gonna work. It might wasn't involved in that.
I know, I'll be very, very clear for the record. I want it to be, Mr. Nixon was not.
That's what I'm saying, I'm not involved in that. But I mean, you've done that, you do that research, So I mean, when we're looking at it, we think it's been done. I'm pretty sure that a system can be created that's translucent, that can act as a roof, maybe not from that manufacturer. But there would be an assembly that would, I think, you could achieve what our goal was, that he doesn't like coming through.
That's right.
Yeah, I think there may be translucent alternatives on the market. Yeah, they're expensive, but and this is beyond purview, but I'll say it anyway. Make sure your structural engineer has chased those lateral forces down through the entire building, because that whole structure was designed as open air. Now it's an open structure subject to tremendous uplift pressures.
Won't turn into a box kite.
There are other ways of having some operable, screen, which may be also expensive, but at the increment weather, you can just closed underneath. And people can trailer services. And other times, so. Right?
Yes. Would a temporary, or we wouldn't call it temporary, but something like that need board approval as well, because it's.
Maybe what you heard about the previous applicant, this board technically does not have purview over items that are truly temporary. What you're describing would, I think, would be a system that is more than temporary, and the prudent applicant would go ahead and apply and get it approved rather than run the risk of having a stop work order. In this layperson lawyer's opinion. But we understand your quandary and also understand that this was put in your lap. But that being said, I think we all agree that this would be, I think Jay used the word material downgrade. Somebody did.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and introduce a motion for denial of the opaque roof system.
The opaque or the metal.
Yeah,
opaque
metal,
roofs.
opaque
Yes,
metal
thank
roof
you.
system.
Yeah, okay. So there's a motion to deny the opaque metal roofing system. Is there a second?
I'm happy to say.
There's a second from Mr. Metters. That's in proper order. Would you accept a friendly amendment incorporating board and staff?
Oh,
comments?
yes, yeah, of course, yes.
Okay, that amendment is accepted. Mr. Brown, how do you vote?
Yeah, in favor.
Mr. Metters, Mr. Socek,
Yeah, in favor.
Mr. White,
Yay in favor.
and myself, in favor. Mr. Nixon, despite the denial, we'll look forward to working with you on alternatives here that accomplish what I think everyone understood previously. Okay?
Thank you.
All right. And agenda item number 8. Number 9.
Alright, 480 East Bay Street. Building is not rated. In the old historic district, requesting a new aluminum pergola in the courtyard, which is under construction.
I'm Lee Rodriguez, LMPR.
So we'll give you some we'll give you
Hold on one
come
second.
up to board with some aerials and stuff. So just to kind of orient you, the address is East Bay Street, but this is actually on Washington Street where you will actually see it. So the property goes from street to street. And this has been upgraded from this photo, but this is the courtyard, significantly upgraded. I had to keep going back and forth like, is it in the right place? Just looking south on Washington. And then this is from Meeting Street. This is the front of the property. Okay.
And now, Mr.
You're better.
I'm Lee Rodriguez, LMPR Architects, and Tyler with the manufacturer in case we need some more comments. But yeah, as you saw, that was the previous condition, and now we'll get to on the east side towards Washington Street, previous condition, not super attractive. And now this is more the current condition, is still under construction. The courtyard has still not been paved. The interior up is being completed. That's under permit right now. The owner decided to come back and add this pergola as an exterior amenity, provide some shelter. Across from the power station and that parking garage from the aquarium, and beside the South Atlantic Bank building and some smaller scale residential structures to the north, I think. This was the previous courtyard plan. Nothing there except furniture, brick pavers, fence along that planned north side, blocking out that service route to the rear of the building, and the utilities on that back wall with the with a wall, a large CMU wall between the seating area and the cooler, and some landscape there as well. This proposed courtyard plan cleaned it up a little bit, took off some layers. So now it's, the pergola is there in orange with the movable seating. Landscape stays the same, fence stays the same, everything else is the same except for the seating and the addition of the pergola. This is the previous aerial model view. Proposed. Previous street view, north along or north-ish from Washington. There's the pergola.
view sort of in that service alley. And then with the pergola is not solid. As you'll see in the next view, it's actually aluminum slats that span the full 18 feet. And I believe it has lights in it as well. These are just some structural drawings for reference. It's aluminum, fully aluminum clad system. And about 10 feet tall to the bottom of the slats, 10 foot 10 to the top.
That's, that concludes your presentation. Very good. That's a good thing. No comment from the public.
Doesn't appear to be.
Board,
Shocked.
and staff comments, recommendations.
So this courtyard was approved by the board and has subsequently been incrementally fine-tuned, with minor revisions being worked through with staff. Staff finds that the courtyard has evolved favorably and that the introduction of a new prominent roofless pergola element is acceptable, but goes beyond what staff considers a minor revision. Therefore, is being brought before the board for discussion and deliberation. All right, some comments. Number one, while depicted in the renderings as black, assuming to match the fencing and windows, the color of the pergola might be better as a softer, more compatible color with the majority of the courtyard elements. Two, all exposed fasteners, such as the boxed out columns, are to be organized in a manner which makes visual sense and is clearly illustrated. All bolts at the column bottom plates are to remain recessed below the brick pavers as depicted in the detail 4S2.00, so as to not be a hazard or impediment to those walking around them. And last, any lighting in or on the pergola will need to be explained and discussed with specific approval being granted by the board if allowed. So I heard lighting was mentioned, so we might just need to go over that.
Yeah, that's fine.
Any response, Mr. Rodriguez?
No response.
Comments? Okay, very good. I think this was an easy one. You're not planning on adding any metal roof elements.
I'm not. Don't worry, I'll convey all the information to the owner.
Or translucent panels that can withstand
The
hurricane.
roof on it's gonna have to be structural glass. It's gonna have to.
Okay, very good.
From the Zonata.
Yeah.
Great. That's how expensive.
Mr. Chairman, so it's got for reference only on the two kind of drawings on here. But I looked down through it and some of the issues that you brought up, Tori, some of the sleeves and stuff are above ground and not below ground. I don't think it's a problem. But in some of the detail sections from the manufacturer. And then there was some like internal drainage within the pipe that's not relative to this, but it doesn't matter.
Yeah, I'll let Tyler speak to that.
Yeah,
Definitely.
and I mean,
So all the fasteners are concealed and there is an internal drain, but will pop out like a gutter at the bottom. And then the bolts, like they said, will be beneath the pavers or the brick.
So I just wondered, would it be draining?
What was that?
What would it be draining?
Water.
No, but he's saying like, what's it catching if it's open?
Oh, so it's an operable roof. So you can open and close it.
Oh, that's good.
Oh, no.
I missed
Oh,
that.
the louvers articulate.
Yeah.
I didn't realize that.
I did not know that.
What was that?
Yeah, so it's electrical. We have one actually at Husk as well, which
That's
y'all
right.
approved, so. But it's an operable roof system, opens and closes with a push of a button,
So you controlling the,
with a remote.
no, you control the sunlight? Why? you-
Yeah, exactly, just to allow, or to close out
so
rain.
the-
Yeah.
create the shade in there? Okay.
Exactly, yes, ma'am.
I don't have any problem with the concept and the fact that you're telling us right now that the louvers articulate, I mean, that's okay. Louvers in historic shutters articulate as well. But I think since these are just sort of standard detail drawings, I would feel more comfortable if staff had a chance to look at shop drawings that are specific to this project. So that staff knows exactly what's.
I agree. I think that would be the intent anyway.
Yeah, definitely. We can have this sent over.
Yeah, you actually did request those. It's just the manufacturer didn't have time to produce them in time.
It's a frequent issue. Is there a motion?
Yep, sure,
Move for approval incorporating board staff comments. Is there a second? Mr. White, Mr. Brown,
Yay in favor.
Mr. Matters, Ms. Socha, Mr. White, and myself, yay in favor. Thank you to the applicant.
Thank you very much. Hey.
We approved these minutes for.
And a very.
How you How you come up with stuff is because you don't know why that's the thing, right? It goes around stuff like that.
Right, right.
It did say that the system will remain as within different snowfall or hurricane. Okay.
You know.
I didn't.